Thank you, everybody. I'm glad that everyone was able to join. I'm Nicole Munoz, the Vice President for our Environmental Certifications Division, and excited to be joined with Paul Shariah, Michael Bloom, Allison Kin from the Ecomedes and GSA group. We'll be talking about how our products feed into the platform. So I will kick it off to you, Paul.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Nicole, for the kind introduction. We're really excited to share with you all how the SCS certified products that you guys have all worked so hard to get the certification and eco-label data applied to, how it works within the federal space, how the EPA created a great set of rules and guidelines for products in various categories. And then Michael will introduce us to how the GPC and SF tool in general work. And then I'll conclude the presentation with an overview on how we grab that data, we ingest it from SCS, we make it available to the entire federal procurement universe. So without further ado, I'll let Allison kick it off with a quick introduction to herself and then her content.
Thank you. And I'm just rejoining after getting a frozen screen there for a moment. So I missed the introduction. Good to see everyone. I am Allison Kin Bennett with EPA's Environmentally Preferable Purchasing Program. We sit in the Office of Chemical Safety and Pollution Prevention and have had a long time relationship with SCS and many other standards and eco-label organizations, because our program sort of theory of change is to work with and leverage the power of private sector standards and eco-labels to drive the market. The other half of what we do is leverage federal purchasing, which, as you know, is quite a maze. And we're here today to show you how we're trying to simplify that and give greater access to greener products to federal purchasing. So our program was a bit ahead of its time in taking this strategy and engaging in private sector standards, in taking a multi-attribute life cycle perspective on what is environmentally preferable in terms of products and services. And we're really excited that it's finally matured to becoming an international movement. The power of public procurement and the role of standards in supporting public purchasers and other large institutional purchasers and aligning their supply chain and procurement with their environmental and social goals has arrived. So I'm looking forward to sharing with you our little role in that space. We're just a program of 3 people, but we think through leveraging the greatest pocketbook and all of the great work and innovations in the standards community, have a big impact. So next slide. We draw on and weave together many different authorities. This is just for your reference to come back later. Executive Order 13834 has since been rescinded, and you're probably aware the Biden administration has released a couple of new EOs. There could be more on the way in our space of leveraging the power of federal procurement and federal buildings to support administration, climate, environmental justice, and other goals. And so just wanted to share with you that not only is our program rooted in a long history of executive orders for greening the government, but also the Pollution Prevention Act and the Federal Acquisition Regulation. And the federal government is directed to engage in and use private sector standards and conformity assessment in procurement. So our program kind of fits within all these spaces. Next slide. We engage in a number of private sector standards, as I mentioned, but I wanted to point out that given the stovepipes of the federal government, I think a real value added of EPA's EPP program is that we do this coordination work across EPA's offices and Department of Labor and Department of State when necessary to help bring together a full perspective on environmental and social responsibility and supply chains to private sector standards. So if you are interested in connecting with some of those other experts around the agency, often the EPP program is a good place to start because we kind of are an inch deep, a mile wide in knowing all the subject matter experts. What I'm going to, real quick, we'll also be talking today about how we assess and recommend specification standards and eco labels, how we help feds buy environmentally preferable products and services through our partnerships with Michael Bloom and the SF tool, how we assist small businesses in navigating the federal marketplace, and then lots more to do in this last one, but we're trying to help through standards measure the benefits of buying green, which helps people do more of that. So next slide. Clearly a big federal footprint. And this is really also why we have such a large responsibility to lead by example. A long way to go in meeting a number of administration goals, but you've probably already heard, we're trying to move to 100% electric vehicle fleets. We're trying to decarbonize our supply chains. We're trying to do a better job of managing our federal lands. So lots of opportunity here in looking at the federal footprint is not only reducing our own footprint, but helping state and local governments and other countries learn from how we manage our big assets. Next slide. Well, you all probably know this well, but probably useful for me to tell you why and how we participate in standards besides the directive to do so from the OMB Circular A119. Our program has relied on standards as a way to help us define environmentally preferable across the life cycle, so we don't shift risks by looking at just energy efficiency or just indoor air quality or just recycled content. There's interlinkages in these issues, challenges that manufacturers know well in trying to address a number of different what we call hotspots in their products and supply chains. So working through standards gives us a non-regulatory collaborative approach for addressing complex environmental issues and gives industry a real clear path of progress. So a number of the standards that we've engaged in or recommending have different tiers of performance, from gold to a bronze level, for example, that can help a manufacturer, we think, understand and set their sights on more aspirational goals and what is practical today as well. We've just enjoyed the opportunity to learn in these discussions during standards development that we can take home and rethink our full agency's approach to environmental protection. Next slide. So because standards are so successful at what they do, is providing a real simple, easy button for purchasers and manufacturers and governments, we've seen a really large growth in these. Next slide. And to the point where, as you know, you're probably feeling, next slide, you're probably feeling this, that it's really become a bit of a challenge to sort through the wide variety and approaches that these standards and eco-labels can take. Some of these are developed by a manufacturer's own marketing department, and there may not be a third-party certification component to them. Some of these are single attribute, some are multi-attribute, looking at the full life cycle. So a wide variety of approaches, a lot of noise out there, and it's difficult unless you're an environmental expert and have 40 hours a week to understand the marketplace. We're challenged in getting through this noise. So next slide. Our program heard going back 10 to 15 years ago, maybe EPA is in an appropriate role to help clarify the market and simplify this noise. And so we undertook an interagency effort with multi-stakeholder engagement and public comment to develop a set of criteria, our guidelines for assessing standards and eco-labels. And Linda and Stowe from SCS were really engaged with us during our pilot to test these guidelines in the flooring, furniture, and paints and coatings categories. And we were able to help identify what are those best practices in standards and eco-labels, and recommend a subset of the marketplace in those categories. In addition, our recommendations are made up of where we've seen other federal agencies successfully utilize private sector standards and eco-labels in their own procurement and policy. So Department of Energy has a Green Buy program, and GSA's Public Building Service has identified key sustainable products, standards, and eco-labels as well. And so we've adopted those into our recommendations for government-wide use. Next slide. This is just a little bit more information about our guidelines. So we've looked at how is the standard developed? Is it a voluntary consensus standard? If not, if it's used some other development process, that's okay. But the federal government needs to understand that. And so as a part of our recommendations, we indicate if it's a voluntary consensus standard or not. Most importantly for EPA is the second section of our criteria looking at is the standard actually effective at addressing human health and environmental impact? Section 3 looks at, is there a competent certification or conformity assessment program to back up the standard? And what's the governance of the eco-label program in Section 4? So each of these guidelines provide the information point for the federal government about a standard or eco-label being considered for government-wide use. Next slide. These are the categories that we currently have recommendations of specifications, standards, and or eco-labels. Next slide, please. And ta-da, these are the key standards and eco-labels we're recommending. You can see SCS, indoor air quality logo right there. Indoor Advantage is recommended in a number of our product categories. And we are interested in your advice and feedback on if and how and where to expand in categories and or in additional standards and eco-labels that have come to the market. One more click, just to note that where a standard and eco-label addresses some issues very well, but maybe there's additional environmental and or human health impacts that the federal government cares about, we would recommend using a standard eco-label plus a specification. We've done that in furniture with regard to transparency around flame retardants consistent with California's regulations. And this is important for indoor air quality specifications to, at the very least, address and being consistent with the CDPH California 1350, as it's known, indoor air quality emissions specification. So that is our effort at EPA. Now I'll turn it over to Michael to show you how that is being implemented in the federal government.
Great. Thanks, Allison. I'm Michael Bloom. I'm with GSA's Office of Federal High Performance Green Buildings, and we sit in GSA's Office of Government-Wide Policy. I'm thrilled to be here with you, and I manage the Sustainable Facilities Tool, which we colloquially call the SF Tool. It's SFTool.gov, and it's quite literally the bridge between, at least technologically speaking, between statutory requirements and the EPA's excellent work on specification standards and eco-labels, and the product search and data enrichment project that Paul's going to speak with you all about in a moment. Let's go to the next slide. Because I manage the SF tool writ large, I wanted to make sure you were aware of the fact that it's there as a resource for you and any of your associates or the businesses that you work with. SF tool was actually created back in 2011 to help anybody understand and make sustainable and effective decisions by not only talking about what federal folks need to do, but also why and how they should act. It's built for novices and experts alike to actually benefit from facility and procurement resources that we have there. And it is constantly updated. It garners thousands of visitors per week from mostly the US, but also internationally as well. And it serves as the system of record for all that my office does, which doesn't only mean sustainable procurement, but mostly things that are attached to sustainable facilities, including health in buildings, where we have a fantastic module about health content, including the use of light and air and biophilic design in spaces. The health and wellness crosswalk that is in the SF tool is also fantastic and includes things that are very furniture based, like the idea of standing desks, and talks about their benefits and the fact that they don't automatically solve all problems, unfortunately, right? The other things that we tackle are things like cost-effective upgrades, showing what kinds of changes folks can be making in spaces of any size in different climate regions throughout the country. We dive down deep into material comparisons at the product category level, showing how different types of flooring behave in more or less sustainable or durable or more recycled content kinds of ways. And you can compare them to each other in almost like a CarMax immediate fashion, which is really cool. We also, and we'll talk much more about this, have the green procurement compilation, which we call GPC, which is the procure section of SFTool. And we are currently starting work on a healthy cleaning module that I'll be delivering in the third quarter of 2021. In December, our site got this new look that you see on the screen now, with updated features, including a total workplace scorecard, which helps workplace and building managers benchmark and measure quality improvements between existing and new workplace conditions. And that's something that we work on with our GSA Public Building Service Total Workplace group. It fully integrates health, comfort, and performance considerations into workplace engagements, and again, is a tool that is available to all of you. Clearly, sustainability isn't just one thing. It's not just the sustainable procurement of things. Saving resources and reducing waste and limiting emissions and toxins and creating healthy spaces for people. Consequently, the work really requires collaboration and integration across people with disparate expertise and across agencies and contractors and science. And so that's the reason why we're so invested in multi-attribute standards that include health and energy and water and track performance, and sharing that performance really, or that performance data really matters from multiple sources. So, and then I will also say that most critically, what we care about is knowing what information is most important and delivering it to those who need it most in a way they can understand it and do it. So that's why we invest so much of our time in building links to resources that simplify the universe that Allison Convenit just introduced you to. Let's go to the next slide. There aren't many government sites like SFTool, and we quickly realized that our ability to use a plain English language approach to building systems could be really helpful in implementing sustainable practices within procurement, which when we first put the GPC on SFTool, it was an Excel spreadsheet that just a few people had, and we realized that we needed to start what you saw EPA take even further, the process of actually simplifying all the regulations. So my office assembled a team of sustainability experts with significant technology chops to build a site that helped federal agencies implement sustainable facility strategies and projects of all sizes. And our task wasn't about just crunching that big data, it was about demystifying this world. We wanted to track which products were actually covered by federal environmental programs first, like Energy Star, WaterSense, BioPreferred, CPG, and Safer Choice. And we added services later and additional details, including specification standards and eco-labels like SCS. And we also added departmental specific resources for organizations that went beyond federal requirements, like the Department of Energy or PBS. They had federal plus kind of needs to show. So let's go to the next slide. The next slide shows 27 different GPC categories from appliances to vehicles, and those green boxes indicate those that we are covering in SFTool product search, which isn't everything, but it is a great deal of categories and subcategories. And they also have the most significant data and project impact in facilities. Let's go to the next slide. So here we're talking about what kind of category, subcategory, and guidelines we cover in the GPC. We have all major product categories with subcategories underneath, which is where the bulk of content really is. Cleaning products itself has over 18 different has 18 product subcategories associated with it. And each one of those is actually quite deep as well. And then each subcategory has its own procurement guidelines. In other words, it's like a confusing thing to do if you don't have some structure that helps you. Let's go to the next slide. So when it comes to category guidance, and this is in the area of building finishes. What Paul has done for us on this slide is kind of make the stuff that's underneath the picture large enough for us to read. Essentially, when you click on floor coverings, non-carpet, you're provided a prioritized list of the federal environmental programs, in this case, bio-preferred federal, and the standards or specification standards and eco labels that Allison covered that are relevant to this set of products. The multi-attribute standards, as we emphasize, are really important. Those are listed first under the Federal Environmental Program. And then the single attribute standards later. And you'll see SCS is there as a non-federal single attribute standards and eco label. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So the GPC is extremely rich, but actually I'm going to bounce back to the previous slide. The GPC is extremely rich, but if we just stopped here and said, okay, now you person who needs to actually follow this guidance, go and click on all those links that we provided and figure out what complies and whether, and gather all that data and do that work, it would take an awful large lift. In fact, this is where we often see slippage between people finally seeing what they need to follow and actually doing it. And so the advent of being able to have big databases talk to each other and technologists being able to normalize those databases so we could actually organize it in a way that people doing this work could get everything in one place is the reason we've thought, how can we go beyond just doing a good job of showing what guidance goes per product category and actually talk about products themselves. So now let's go to the next slide. So we were missing that product level information. And what we needed was a way to build binoculars to get people from that huge list of potential links that they'd click on to exactly the information that was relevant to them in a pre-sorted list of products that complied. In the past, it was also hard to do this because if a new product came up 6 months into a year, how would you make sure that that product was listed on this site, right? But now, again, because we have access to data, we can do that. And so we jumped at the chance to actually be able to use our GPC product category guidelines and as a filter for a database about sustainable products. And this is where I hand you off to Paul to go even further on that point.
Great. Thank you, Michael. So my name is Paul Shariah. I'm the founder and chief innovation officer here at Ecomedes. And I've spent my entire career trying to simplify sustainability and predominantly trying to leverage as much technology as we can to make that decision-making process easier. Because as I grew in this space and this career, it started to grow in complexity. You know, when I first started doing work as a lead faculty member early on in my career, I needed to know about 15 or 16 attributes on a product, and I could fill out, you know, most of the lead scorecards and even teach that as a class with the USGBC educational department. And then as it grew, you know, we saw the need to have more and more data, and then lead bifurcated in many different versions. And then we had the onset of well and lead. And as this data grew, it became more of a data problem than it was truly a sustainability problem. So we're really proud to be part of the technology platform that took all the great guidance that Allison and the rest of the team at EPA created by saying that these eco labels are good, they have valid data structures, they're really making sure that these products meet these performance guidelines. But what we wanted to do for Michael is actually gather up all those data registries as if I was doing the work or you guys were doing the work as a consultant. But imagine going to all those registries and finding all those product category rules, organizing all that data so that flooring or furniture or many of the categories have multitudes of eco labels or certifications that are valid. Imagine trying to gather that on a daily, monthly, or weekly basis. And that's where our technology comes in. We essentially on a monthly basis gather all that data, put it into what we call a data lake, and we then synchronize it against Michael Bloom and GSA's guidelines in the GPC. So we gather all the data, but only products that have met the guidelines as defined in the GPC make it into this platform. We cover 15 of the big categories, and those break down into about 150 subcategories, 4,500 brands, give or take. This always is changing on a monthly basis, make it through that gauntlet of data requirements, 20 or so eco labels, SCS giving us several different categories of product data because the floor, score, level, and indoor advantage come in there automatically, hundreds of product performance attributes now are in our systems. Globally, we have 2,500 unique eco-related product attributes. Allison has a great picture of all those eco labels, but underneath those eco labels, there's actually more detailed data that sits within there. Like a typical Energy Star data point coming in on a refrigerator might actually have 48 other pieces of information that we have to bring in. So every month, about 150,000 products are curated by us and then presented to the federal buying committee so that all that data research is automatically done for them. It's a free tool. Anybody can use it. You as a brand can use it with your sales team, your distributors can use it, vendors, architects, anyone can use this tool if they're working on federal projects and would like to create a project representation of that data. And what Michael kind of showed is that floor coverings example. So essentially our platform with that one click at the top, the binoculars up here at the top, they are essentially going to our database, finding all the product data from all these different eco labels, and then showing you the 7,813 results that have met one or more of these federal programs, third-party eco labels, or some of the additional filters on high performance that would be like an HPD or an EPD that are all on top of something up here in either the federal programs or the eco labels. And then you can sort by seeing what brands are available and things like that. So the SCS certification data feed that we currently have in our system is BIFMA level, floor score, indoor advantage, and indoor advantage gold. So those are the ones that we pull in on synchronized at a minimum on a monthly basis. In some cases, manufacturers have data updates that are coming in more frequently, but that's essentially what we wanted to showcase for you guys today. And I'll do a live demo now. And again, it's a free tool. Anyone can register and create a free account. The reason why you'd want to create an account is you can save your work. So if you want to do a finished schedule or something that has more than just one product in that evaluation, you actually build out a project and then evaluate it against federal guidelines or LEED or WELL or something like that. And what I'll cover in the demo is just some quick search and filtering results, how that works, how a product can be discovered on our platform. We'll walk you through an example of a comparison within a category, showcase the differences in the data, how you can analyze a product and document that element, create a PDF for yourself with one click. And then also we'll end it with just showing how users can track and create a project, analyze multiple products across multiple categories from multiple eco labels, all in the construct of a single procurement or a project. And ultimately, if you have an account, we'll show you how we track overall performance on SF Tools. So without further ado, I will jump right in. And I'm going to just step back just to show you that linkage between SFTool.gov and our platform. So if you went into procure, as Michael talked about, here's the guidance. There's building finishes, furnishings. I'm going to keep this example rolling. So if I went to building finishes and clicked on floor coverings, non-carpet, immediately I can see all the procurement details that you might be following. And these are the ones that Allison and her team took a look at. So there's bio preferred, there's cradle to cradle, there's floor score, there's SCS indoor advantage gold. And what we do is we gather up all this data from our database and say, would I like to just see all the brand name products that meet these requirements? So with these binoculars, a federal buyer can just click one button and they land in these results. And these results are then, brand specific. So I can see all the brands that actually have met those guidelines. And the parentheses identify how many products from each one of those brands have met those guidelines. If I want to further refine the search by certain federal programs or certain eco labels, I can always refine the search down to say only the things that meet floor score. So with one click, I'll now have 7,156 results that meet that. And I can further sort by the brands that I might be interested in. So if I say I was interested in, say, Gerflor, now I see all 148 products that are part of that guideline. In this example, the manufacturer doesn't have the picture with us, so we can work with them to enrich their data, and that's part of the data enrichment program we're here to talk about. But we have links directly back to that certificate or the product page. So if that user wanted to see that certificate, they could actually see that floor score certificate, and it comes directly from the certifying body. 95% of all the eco labels that are partnered up with SF Tool Product Search have direct linkages back to the source of that data, because that's really where that data deserves to live. You can then further your research right there on the site. Another really powerful part of this tool is that I can search by other elements that I'm looking for. So if I just came in right away and wanted to search by floor score, I could do that. Or if I was looking for indoor advantage gold, I could say I want to see every product that's in there. So there's 5,000 results available to me. And I could search by then what categories do those results come in. So I can say, oh, I'm looking for building furnishings. Well, in furniture, what kind of a product is it? So I can see the seating products that are SCS Indoor Advantage Gold. I can even go down to subtypes. So there's a lot of detail that we can uncover to help the specifier, the A&D rep, the sales rep, the furniture dealer find that information. And if it's all the way down to task chairs, I can still see all the different brands that have achieved that threshold. If I wanted to see a comparison between a couple, I can add that one to a comparison, add this one to a comparison, find another brand in here, National Office Furniture. I'll put this one in. And what's nice is in the platform, to get apples to apples, all you have to do is select a couple products. And because we have a structured database, even though the data is coming from multiple different sources, you can actually see things apples to apples. Who has contact information? Which one's the master format? Can I link out the product pages? Yes. 2 of them are level certified, one at level 3, one at level 2, one's not level certified. So all of the SCS Indoor Advantage Gold certificates are available with a hyperlink. You can see when they expire, and even down to some recycled content information. So what's really nice is this is a very powerful way to see things apples to apples, and it is shareable. So if you grab this link, I'm going to put it in the chat right now for everybody on the call. I can actually drop that link directly into chat and send it to all of you, and then you guys could actually pick up that linkage in the chat and also share it with a project team. So if you need to collaborate as we're all doing our work digitally, it's a very fast way for people to take a look at the same data without everyone going on a kind of a data scavenger. I call it the data scavenger hunt to go find that information. There's 2 other things I'll point out. I don't know if many of you guys would want to know, but this is available to you guys too, is if you're looking for things like light bulbs, you can actually go in there, find light bulbs, and we actually have built-in calculators for how those products will save a user money. So if you want to type in the number of quantity and then the unit price, you can actually get a dynamically generated ROI calculation for watts and convert the watts savings to monthly, yearly, and length of analysis savings. Similar things could be done with plumbing. You can look at plumbing fixtures and see how many gallons they'll save and how much dollar amount can be saved. So the whole point of the platform is to not only give you guys really quick answers and really quick data on any of these eco-labels, any of these products across any brand that's in the system, but also allows you to build up your own account. And if you register for a free account, you'll be able to build out a project's worth of data. So this is an example that we used earlier today. So you can build out a project and then dump as many of the products that are compliant into one project view and have furniture, flooring, lighting, plumbing, all that stuff analyzed at one time. And then we can see like a multitude of products saving energy for the project, a multitude of things saving water. You can isolate the ROI charts automatically within the tool. And at the bottom is like the really most powerful part of the tool is you can analyze all the products above across all those manufacturers and all those eco-labels against, say, federal guidelines, LEED. You can actually analyze anything in our tool against WELL, Living Building Challenge. It's all in here. So if you want to take a look, even if the project's not achieving those certifications, you can kind of take them all for a test drive and hit evaluate. And what we'll do is we'll take all those products and all that data that we've organized for you during search, and we can analyze them all as if we were your lead consultant or your federal procurement consultant. So all the products in here have met compliance. Obviously, by default, they're on the SF tool, but we actually identify which GPC rules have been followed. And then we summarize your LBC V4 guidelines, your lead calculations for all the credits that might be possible, the WELL guidelines, and we summarize those savings for energy and water, all available to you with one click in a couple of seconds. Underneath that, you'll also see a full report with all the details of all the products that you included in your project, along with how each one of those products met the federal guidelines if they did, and LBC, LEED, and WELL. So it's a really nice program that kind of save you a lot of time and effort. And then you can download this PDF to your account. And then you can also share that dynamic PDF with a project team member. But all that documentation, along with all those product details, will automatically be summarized in a PDF that you can share with your team. The hyperlinks within this PDF will also remain active. So you'll have a date stamped PDF on SF Tool letterhead. And then any of the details within those product pages will hyperlink you back out to whatever the underlying data is. So that generated, I think 43-page document for you, along with the compliance of every element. And that PDF has those dynamic linkages in there. So if someone needed to see that BIFMA level certificate or cradle to cradle, anyone receiving that PDF can click on that hyperlink And again, it will take you back to the SCS documentation you guys all work so hard for, and you have the full power of that certification embedded inside of that PDF for you. So that's the general sense of what I wanted to share with you guys today in the live demo. The last thing I'll point out is if you are registered with an account, and again, it's free, you can actually look at all your project impacts at once. So what I've done here is you can jump in here and always make edits to your projects that you build on the platform, but it also summarizes your overall watts and water and dollar savings impact across all the projects in your portfolio. So it makes it very easy for sales reps, distributors, sales teams, or the federal buyer to kind of build out a project portfolio worth of data and kind of give at the user level, at least, what have I done to help this client, or what have I done on behalf of my brand in terms of all the projects we've worked on. It kind of gives you a little bit of summary, and you can always, if you have no more need for the project, you can always just delete it and it'll come off your log, and then it'll automatically adjust the stuff up above. So that is it from the live demo perspective. I'm going to send it back to the slide deck, and then we can answer any questions you guys might have. I know there's a lot of information. I'll conclude with this, is that our platform is designed to bring benefit to both the federal buying community. As an institutional buyer, we want to simplify their compliant product discovery. It's a huge burden, as Mike said. You know, a lot of times people go on that journey, and as soon as they got to look through all those hyperlinks or all those different eco labels, they get lost. We wanted to make that easy by just creating a curated catalog of compliant products that we believe streamlines projects and procurements immensely. About 95% of the data research is automated when you use sftool.ecomedes.com. And ultimately, we believe that those two things in the equation will lead to a much more improved building performance being able to be achieved. Because if it's hard to go find the better products, and it's not very easy to document what you've bought to make the building better, it's really hard to then go back and prove that we spent the money in the right place and we've made those buildings better. The same exact thing happens on the manufacturer vendor side, is that you simplify the product positioning because all your data is automatically in the space. You can streamline customer support when people ask you questions about does it meet federal guidelines or not. It's really simple. If it's in SCS, it's on their registry, it's going to get pulled into our platform. So that should be fairly simple to answer those questions quickly. And then ultimately your product is delivering part of that performance story to the overall building. And that's kind of the crux of what we focus on every day at Ecomedes, is to make that easy, both for the buyer to find better products, but also the sellers and the vendors and the manufacturers to position all those betterments of that product data in a way that actually is easy for owners and buyers to see it. So with that, I will introduce the data enrichment program. I know this is a lot of information. Any of you guys want to do a one-on-one, we'll be happy to show you the data we currently have on behalf of your brand and our platform. And we have a data enrichment program that allows you to give us more data that helps the federal buyer see more about your brand. So brand alignment sometimes is different, all the different eco labels you guys have. We can align SKU information, product name alignment, images. You can give us more data like contact information for sales, or your federal GSA contract information. If you're Buy America Act compliant, we'd love to have that information. Manufacturing locations can be added, and we'd love to make that an easier process for you. It's a simple spreadsheet we'll share with you on the call. You guys fill it out, we'll correlate the data, and then we'll launch it. It's usually 1 business week after you give us the data. It'll be now available to all federal buyers on the Ecomedes platform. So you can schedule a one-on-one with me, just paul@ecomedes.com. And now I'll open up for questions for everyone. So I've got a question here in the QA. Has the state of California enacted any legislation with regards to procurement whereby products must meet a certain carbon footprint? I'll let Allison answer that. I'm not aware of anything yet legislatively that requires them to meet a certain footprint percentage or GWP.
No, you might want to keep an eye on a draft bill, the Clean Future Act, that has a federal Buy Clean program proposal in that. I don't know if Michael, you have anything else to share?
I don't have anything further than that. That's exactly what I'd point to
Okay.
as well. Actually, it's not, it doesn't immediately answer that question about California legislation, but it is an additional resource that you can look for coming out soon on our GSA website about the advice letter from the Green Building Advisory Committee on Embodied Energy. The Green Building Advisory Committee meets to, as public and private entities to advise GSA on what things we might consider in the future. And they just tackled this issue on embodied carbon in construction. And that's something that is imminent, meaning next week you'll see that posted.
Yeah, and within the tool, you can search for products that have an EPD. So that's a starting point to at least say, does the product I'm looking at have an EPD? And then can I go dive in to look at the global warming potential and see whether or not that's within the range of products that I want. Any other questions? Please feel free to use the Q&A chat box or chat. We'll be happy to answer any questions. Or I think you can raise your hand and maybe we can open up your mic. I'm not sure, Caroline, how we would do that, but please use the chat box so we can answer your questions. All right, Marie Ortega, we are seeking specifications with greenhouse gas benchmark criteria. Are you hearing benchmarks in the private sector? I do see development of certain product category rules that allow people to say, hey, I want products that have a PCR, then have maybe an EP that's published, and people are trying to start segmenting whether they're in the 80th or the 60th or the 40th or the 20th percentile. I think in certain categories like cement and maybe drywall and glass, there are steel, there are certainly some really forward-leaning companies that are looking at that at the ingredient level, but I'm not quite sure of any specific, private sector person saying specifically, I want this building category to only have products that have this much global warming potential associated with them by the pound if it's steel or by the cubic yard if it's concrete. But I know a lot of work and efforts going into that. I just don't know of any specifics. Michael or Allison, do you have anything to add to that for the private sector?
I'm just reading the Q&As myself, and maybe I think these are all related questions. So just to clarify, yes, the state of California has a Buy Clean California Act, which does require environmental product declarations to be submitted to the state. And there's a timeline by which they will begin to establish certain thresholds for carbon footprints. Maybe is the quickest way to answer that. In terms of the second Marie's question, I think it's very much based in environmental product declarations. So the question will be, how do we use those environmental product declarations as procurement tools? Our program has found that in many categories, it's challenging for federal purchasers and other institutional purchasers that are not environmental experts to use EPDs as a procurement tool and to make comparisons and to identify leading products in terms of environmental performance based upon reading an EPD. That's largely because sometimes an EPD uses industry average information. Sometimes they are not very clear about what is leading performance. It's akin to having a nutrition label without recommended daily values. So it's, unless you know how many grams of fat is good, a purchaser will have a challenge in using those directly. And so that's why our program has advocated for EPDs to help inform environmental performance standards that establish those levels of environmental performance and help purchasers understand, well, what is leadership in a sector? If that helps to answer the question.
Yeah, and Karen also commented in chat, there is a tool out there called the EC3 Calculator that compares products based on the global warming potential. So category by category, you can go in there and say, I'm looking at this concrete versus that, or drywall in a certain category, or acoustical ceiling tiles. It's a great tool to kind of get into the very nitty gritty of that. But when I look at most of our clients looking at an entire project or an entire procurement, in a lot of categories, there just hasn't been development of a PCR, which is a product category rule for how an EPD should be organized. So you can see varying results on terms of how that data is structured, but I definitely think that's one of the leading groups that's going to help make the math involved with that become a lot easier as we get more and more category rules in there. So more of the building ingredients can be put into perspective. So that's a great catch. Karen shared that in chat.
Yeah, and Marie, I'm curious which purchase categories or product categories you're seeing these specifications in. I know that for concrete, there has been a calculator developed and made publicly available by ZGF architects that, based upon where you are in the country and what concrete options you have, and what sort of strength you need and the time length of amount of time you have to cure, it helps you understand what is the best option for me to reduce the carbon footprint of my concrete. And how might I specify that? So there are some things in certain categories, but I'm curious where you all might be seeing a push for particular performance thresholds on global warming potential or greenhouse gas benchmark criteria.
All right. Any final Q&A or chat comments anyone wants to leave? The full recording of this will be sent out to you after the presentation concludes, along with a PDF of the slide deck. So we welcome any follow-on questions you might have. If you would like, again, to do the explore the data enrichment program with us, please just send me an email. I'll be happy to set up a Calendly appointment with you, and we can take a look at all the data across the Ecomedes network and from SCS and any other data source you might have, and we'll share with you how we can make that more enriched with pictures and hyperlinks and
right. And I'll put an extra plug in for that. It's really our way of opening the door to making a better user experience for the tool we've created, because it's not the business of registries for federal environmental programs, among others, to actually be searched by consumers. That's not why they were invented. But if we can supplement that critical information, then people who come to the tool to seek sustainability bona fides will also get the kind of user experience they'd get if they were going on a shopping site. And that actually also is something that we think helps close the deal, making it easier for them to even contact the right person about a product is critical. Otherwise, we're still dropping the ball before we've reached the goal line. So thanks for considering interacting with us there. And again, that's a free program. So
I think one more question popped in is there a push to change EPDs to be more readable? That is getting rid of scientific notations? I think there is a huge movement. I think the Carbon Leadership Forum in cooperation with EC3 are working to make them more machine readable, make them more, all the same, formatting the same. It's a little hard to do because there's so many different PCRs, so not every EPD is structured the same way in terms of what it reports against. But I think definitely the EC3 tool and that great effort by a lot of industry leaders is going to definitely help us push towards that, having it more readable, but also it needs to be more machine readable. Like what we find is, okay, I have a carpet towel, I know its carbon footprint, I have something else, I have its carbon footprint. How do I look at those two things side by side? Because in Michael's case of the Carfax, looking at things side by side, there are people that have cork flooring and cork doesn't kill the tree, it shaves it and has in a lot of cases, they say it's a carbon positive footprint because it's negative in terms of its carbon footprint. Others have lower than the other competitor in say carpet. And then some, product manufacturers will offset all the carbon related to their product. So there's a lot of different ways of doing that math. And until it becomes a little bit more refined and defined, it's hard to kind of make true designations, whether this product's good or bad, just basically on one attribute. Anything to add on that to conclude, Mike or Allison?
nope.
Yeah, I would just say that EPDs probably need to be complex, but I hope that then there's translation tools for different audiences so that we use the EPDs to inform purchasing. That you might need another communication method like standards and eco labels, like Paul's work, etc. But it's hard to simplify complex environmental metrics and have them continue to be accurate and useful.
Great. Well, with that, we'll give everybody back 8 minutes of the hour. I'm sure everyone's jumping on another Zoom call or go to meeting. Thank you all for spending time with us. We're really excited to be working with all you great manufacturers and SCS folks. on getting this product data, more enriched, and then get it in front of the federal buying community that are looking to be compliant with the great standards that EPA put out and GSA manages. So thank you all, and we look forward to the recording, and the slide deck will be sent to you after the conclusion of this presentation. Thank you all.